Santa Cruz Megatower. Is this the right second-hand bike for you? And what should you look out for? It's now been 2 full seasons since the Santa Cruz Megatower was released, and people are starting to think about trading them in and getting a new bike. Before we go any further, I think it's really important to point out I am definitely not a Santa Cruz fanboy. It's the first Santa Cruz I've ever owned. In fact, if I look back, I don't think I've ever owned the same brand of bike twice. So, where have I ridden the bike? Well, the answer is pretty much everywhere. I've done trail riding, big mountain enduro rides, uplift days, and plenty of bike park as well. Now, I'm not particularly precious about my bikes. In fact, I should probably take a bit better care of them than I actually do. So if this bike can handle the treatment that I dish out, it should stand up to average wear and tear pretty well. So I guess you want to know how the bike rides. Well, let's talk first a little bit about climbing. This is a big enduro bike, and for a big enduro bike, it climbs pretty well. It's not too much pedal bob, and provided you stay sat in the saddle, you often don't even need to close the shock. However, it is not going to break any climbing records, and it is certainly not going to climb as well as a trail bike. Having said that, I've done some really big days in the saddle of 1,500 to 2,000 meters of climbing, and it got me up perfectly well. Okay, I was dead at the top, but then I'm dead at the top of every climb. Now, this bike is not the plushest of rides, and if you're looking for really good small bump sensitivity, you might be better off looking elsewhere. But if you want a bike that's got a really poppy feel, you can take the big hits like a true champ, you could well be onto a winner with the Megatower. This bike is super stable and incredibly confidence inspiring, especially in steep terrain. And that's why I've ridden blind into gnarly features on this bike that I wouldn't have considered on virtually any other bike I've owned. This bike actually feels much livelier than it really has any right to. In slow technical terrain, it's extremely precise, even if hairpin turns can be a little bit of a handful if you don't have a really good endo turn in your kit bag. I actually managed to break a rim on this bike. Thankfully, the E13 replaced it, no questions asked. However, if you're going to be thinking about this as a second-hand bike, I would strongly suggest you check the rims. Remember, these bikes are made to be ridden hard, so you really should expect the wheels to have taken some pretty heavy abuse. I also managed to lose this little round plate that the axle screws into. The wheel didn't fall out, which was obviously great news, but check that that's there, because if you're not familiar with this bike, you might not even realise it's missing. Another thing that happened to me is that I managed to bend my derailleur hanger. Not something so unusual, but check that your bike shifts well. Have a look at the alignment of the derailleur and ask the seller if they have a spare derailleur hanger. Now, I've got a bike yoke dropper post on my bike, but many of the bikes when they shipped would have shipped with a RockShox reverb dropper post. Now, a lot of people know that there are issues with this post. They can usually be solved just by simply bleeding the post, but if it's got that RockShox reverb, make sure you ask the seller for the bleed kit that would have come with the bike. Paintwork on these bikes is phenomenal. I mean, I've put this bike through the ringer and it's had a few pretty decent crashes, but there are hardly any marks anywhere on the paintwork, which is not something that I could say about other bikes that I've owned. So If you see a big chip on the paintwork somewhere, I would pay a lot of attention to it and take a very close look, because this could be a sign that this bike has had a really big impact. So, who's the Megatower for? This bike is the closest I have ever come to one bike that can do it all. My YT Capra was pretty close, but the Megatower is better in the bike park, and it's actually better at climbing. But if you want to justify such a big bike, I think you need to be a rider that does quite a lot of bike park, uplift days, and or rides a lot of really gnarly enduro trails. If I was looking for a bike to just ride around my local trails, I would not buy something as big and heavy as this. Doesn't mean to say it can't do it, I just think there are better tools for the job if that's all you want from the bike. I guess the ultimate question is though, would I buy this as a second-hand bike? Well, let me tell you, I'm not selling, so I guess that's the answer. Anyway, thanks for coming along, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.